A rich woman's BMW breaks down on a dark mountain road until a kind stranger changes everything. It was almost midnight when the silver BMW rolled to a stop on a lonely mountain road. The headlights dimmed, the engine coughed twice, and then silence. Inside, Madison Hart, a wealthy businesswoman, sat gripping the steering wheel, her breath fogging in the chill night air. She wasn't used to feeling helpless. Not Madison, the CEO who had built a fashion empire, the woman whose schedule was booked down to the minute. But here, with no cell service, no passing cars, and the dark forest pressing in on both sides, she felt small. She got out, wrapping her designer coat tighter around her shoulders, the sharp click of her heels echoing against the pavement. Somewhere in the distance an owl hooted. The world felt unsettlingly quiet. "Great," she muttered. "Just perfect." As minutes stretched into an hour, fear began to gnaw at her confidence. Stories about people disappearing on remote roads replayed in her mind. She imagined headlines, whispers of tragedy, and then headlights appeared around the bend. A battered old pickup truck pulled up behind her car. Madison's heart raced, relief mixed with suspicion. Out stepped a man in worn jeans and a flannel shirt, his hands rough, his face lined but kind. "Evening," he said gently. "Looks like you've got some trouble." Madison hesitated. He looked nothing like the people she did business with, but there was something steady in his voice. "Yes," she finally admitted. "The car just died. Mind if I take a look?" he asked. She nodded, and he lifted the hood, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark. While he worked, Madison stood awkwardly nearby, fighting the urge to check her dead phone. This wasn't how her nights usually went. No assistants, no chauffeurs, just silent stars and a stranger. After some tinkering, the man wiped his hands. "Fuel lines clogged. I can patch it enough to get you down the mountain, but it'll need a proper fix tomorrow." "You can do that?" she asked, astonished. He smiled faintly. "Mom, out here, you learn to fix things or you don't get far." 15 minutes later, the BMW roared back to life. Madison's shoulders sagged in relief. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, pulling a sleek wallet from her purse. The man shook his head. "Don't owe me a thing. Just glad to help." Madison blinked. "But surely you need something." He paused, looking out at the night sky. "A long time ago I broke down on this same road. A stranger stopped and helped me, wouldn't take a dime. Told me one day you'll get the chance to pass it on. Guess tonight's that night." Something stirred inside Madison, an unfamiliar ache. She was used to transactions, not gifts. She had everything money could buy, yet this man, with his rusted truck and calloused hands, seemed to hold something she didn't: peace. As she drove away, her headlights catching his fading figure in the rearview mirror, Madison felt a lump in her throat. For the first time in years, she whispered a quiet thank you, not just to him, but to life itself. The next morning, when she returned to the city, she couldn't shake the memory. That night she called her assistant, cancelled 2 meetings, and drove to a community center she often passed but never entered. She asked what they needed most, and then she gave. Not for tax deductions or publicity, but simply because she could. Months later, volunteers would whisper about the day Madison Hart quietly funded a food bank, bought winter coats for dozens of children, and kept the lights on for families who had none. And when people asked her why, she only smiled and said, "Because one night, on a dark road, a stranger reminded me what really matters." But the story didn't end there. A week later, Madison couldn't stop thinking about the stranger on the mountain road. She realized with a pang of shame that she had never even asked his name. In her world, introductions were the first thing exchanged: business cards, titles, LinkedIn profiles. But that night, all she'd received was kindness, with no strings attached. She found herself driving the same road again, the same stretch of winding mountain highway where her BMW had failed her. Part of her wondered if it was silly, chasing after a memory. But deep down, she hoped to see him again. And then, just as the sun dipped low, she spotted the same battered pickup parked outside a small cabin tucked away near the tree line. Heart pounding, she pulled over. He was there, splitting logs for firewood, his movements steady, practiced. When he looked up, recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by a small warm smile. "Well, if it isn't the lady with the BMW," he chuckled. Madison laughed, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in far too long. "I never got to thank you properly." "You already did," he said simply. "No, I didn't. You helped me when I had nothing to give back." That night, it stayed with me. The man leaned on his axe. Funny thing about kindness. It sticks. Madison hesitated before asking softly, "Can I know your name?" "Daniel," he replied. "Just Daniel." Over coffee in his modest kitchen, Madison learned that Daniel was a veteran. He'd served his country, returned home to little fanfare, and chose a quiet life in the mountains. He didn't have much, but what he had, he valued: peace, simplicity, and a community of neighbors who looked out for one another. Listening to him, Madison felt her world shift. She realized how insulated her life had become, filled with deals and deadlines, yet starved of genuine connection. That night, as she drove back to her penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline, Madison made a decision. She would start giving her time, not just her money. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, Madison Hart became known not just as a powerful businesswoman, but as a woman with a heart for others. She served meals at shelters, read stories to children at the community center, even sponsored scholarships for young people who had dreams but not the means. And though her friends in high society raised eyebrows, wondering why she spent so much time down there, Madison never wavered. Because every time doubt crept in, she remembered Daniel's words: "Kindness sticks." One snowy December evening, Madison returned to the mountain road with bags of groceries and gifts. Daniel greeted her with the same quiet smile. Together they lit a fire, shared stories, and laughed like old friends. And in that moment, BMW parked safely outside. The storm howling beyond the cabin walls, Madison realized she had finally found what money could never buy: humanity, warmth, and a reason to give beyond herself.